Hello everyone, and welcome to my newest In the Bag video. It's been a few years since I've done my last one, so I'm excited to touch base on some of the things that have changed and also talk about the things that have remained the same throughout my entire Innova career. Starting off with the drivers, you know I've got to have the Destroyer in the bag. It's been the most trusted big distance forehand, backhand, and really just the most versatile driver that I've had. Wind days, calm days, it's my go-to. I've got two different Avery Jenkins two-line Destroyers that are nice and kind of like a medium dome, a little bit of firmness to them, but really allow me to get a lot of power behind them and get a full flex. And these are two discs that go in and out depending if I need maximum distance. These are my favorite long distance Destroyers, and these are my old SDS PFN pre-flight number Destroyers, and these things are at least 10 years old and they are just as good as the day that they were produced. I've got a Metal Flake Champion Destroyer, and these things are just absolute hogs in the wind. I can trust this thing with any amount of anhyzer angle, and I know that it's gonna finish on a stable hyzer angle. Great for skip shots, great for low ceilings. This thing is a workhorse when it gets windy outside. A new disc in my bag this year is the Halo Destroyer. These things have a really nice pop top. You got that real nice heart sound when you pop the dome in. And they've been really nice in like a medium level of stability. Really liking the way it's flying. I'm looking forward to getting to know the disc better into the future. The versatility of the Star Wraith is just unmatched for me. I use it for distance shots. I use it for tight tunnel shots. I've got 3 of them in the bag, but sometimes I can go upwards of 4 or 5 depending on how technical the course is. This is my flippiest one. This is a Star Wraith with a little bit more dome. It allows me to put a lot of hyzer on the disc and allow it to stand up late and hold a long turnover line as well. And probably my most reliable stable Wraith is this Star Wraith, and I use this thing for 400 and maybe upwards of 430 and in forehands that just need to go straight and get just a minimal amount of fade at the end of the flight. This is an old Ken Climo Signature Edition Star Wraith. This is also probably a 10 to 12-year-old disc, and I use this thing for pretty much all of my stand-up to fly straight forehands in the woods. I also use it for backhand rollers and huge turnovers. This is a very, very important disc in my bag. The Wraith has not been forgotten. It is still as important today as it was 15, 16 years ago. Without this disc, I would have a huge hole in my bag for so many shots, like I said, up to that 430-foot range. Everyone can find a use for the Star Wraith. As I'd mentioned, there are interchangeable discs that come in and out of my bag, and maybe there's none more important than this one right here. This is my Star Excalibur that I call the fire truck. I can throw it about as far as a fire truck, has about as much glide as a fire truck, breaks through the wind, kind of a similar way too. This thing does not move in the wind, and you need something like that in your bag when the winds really, really start to get heavy. The Finns affectionately know this disc as the Stone, but you could also call it a boulder. It has no glide, and I love that. Rounding out my max speed discs is a very, very important disc that's somewhere between the Excalibur and the Destroyer as far as stability, but also offers a lot of variables that the Destroyer and the Excalibur don't have, and that is my concrete slab. I've got 2 of them in the bag that are equal workhorses for wind, but like manageable flex shots that I really have to get a good skip to the right or have to consistently trust the hyzer to spike in. This thing is great and is my favorite flick roller disc in my bag. I use it so many times to get out of trouble, and without this disc, I'd kind of be scratching my head as to how to get myself out of some of the trouble that I find myself in on the course. Getting into the fairway drivers, you gotta have a nice flippy disc in your bag, and that's where the fairway drivers are so important for me. My best roller disc is the Star Sidewinder. These things are absolutely perfect for the way that I like to throw a backhand roller. Release it flat, maybe a slight bit of anhyzer, and let the disc do all the work. I don't want to throw something that's the most understable disc. I want a disc that's understable enough to hold the stability so that when it hits the ground on roller angle, it doesn't just flip over on its end immediately. I want something that has a little bit of stability so it fights its way for a slow stand-up roller to give me maximum distance. If I'm not throwing a roller with the Sidewinder, I also use it for some technical in the woods stand-up shots that I need to throw forehand and have it fade left, or if I'm in a really strange pinch, throw a backhand and have it finish right. The most important disc in any pro player's bag is the disc that they can throw dead straight between 300 and 330 feet. That's such an important disc when you get in the woods, and for me, there's no better disc in my bag than the Champion Eagle L. I like it so much that I have two different ones in my bag, the very, very understable one and the very kind of a medium understability. If I didn't have them in the bag, I'd be completely lost in the woods. I can release this on so much hyzer and trust that it's gonna stand up, go straight, and at the end, finish to the left. I don't throw this thing for many shots other than the forehand flip up, but occasionally you need something that's super understable in the woods to throw a little backhand cut roller, and this comes in play at that time. This is the one I'm gonna be throwing more times than not because I can throw it on a slight amount of hyzer and it stands up immediately and just goes dead straight all the way till it gets to the ground. I usually don't throw too many earth-colored tie-dye discs, but this thing flies so nice that I just can't not have it in the bag. It's too important to my game. The most important disc for a new player to pick up when they're starting to learn what discs are important to their bag is to get a somewhat understable fairway driver like the Eagle L. You can get a lot of straight shots early on, which is a difficult thing for newer players to attain. And for me, I think that this disc serves a purpose for every level from beginner all the way to pro. If you're trying to spot the difference between an Eagle X and an Eagle L, just look at the rim. The Eagle X is gonna have a slight little tail at the bottom that feels a little bit more like a T-bird, whereas the Eagle L is gonna have a very straight bottom side on the rim. There's a big difference in those two stabilities, so if you're looking for the straighter disc, go with the Eagle L. Now for my stable fairway driver. A staple in my bag and a staple in so many people's bag, you don't have to really talk about it, needs no introduction, but is the Sexton Firebird. I love this disc, I love the mold of the Firebird. It comes out of the forehand grip, the backhand grip so clean, it just feels right in the hand. There's no question why the disc is so popular. It just goes where you want it to go. It makes sense. If you don't have the greatest forehand form, the disc does the work for you. And that's so important because so many people have a flutter release and they have the disc just moving like a duck. And you need a disc that works with you. And the Sexton Firebird just does that. It always does what you want. It goes straight and finishes to the right, or it goes straight and finishes to the left if you're throwing backhand. So for me, this disc has been just so important for slight and hyzer flexes, flat shots, hyzers, anything in that 280 to 340 range. If there's slight headwind, I don't really care about that because the Firebird just is gonna fly consistent and true every time. Also very important is to have my flat top glow Firebird. This thing is used for headwinds that maybe I don't need the speed of the Excalibur or the concrete slab. This is really great for short flexes in the woods, like technical S-turns. Where this disc really earns its stripes in my bag is the thumber. You're gonna see me in the open throwing 340 to 370 foot thumbers. If I've got a tree in the way and I've got a little bit of that angle to get it over the top, this thing is going in my hand. I know where it's gonna land every time. And for me, there's no more important shot to make sure that I'm gonna land straight in line down the fairway than a thumber. It's very easy to do, and it's something that I think every player should work on as they're developing skills. The reason the Glow Firebird is such a good thumber disc is because not only does it have that speed to get you down the fairway, it has a nice slow barrel roll, so it gives you that extra long distance. The quicker a disc flips, the quicker it's gonna get to the ground. So you want something, if you've got enough power to harness it, you want something that has a slow barrel roll so you can get maximum distance. And that is where the Glow Firebird really makes its name in my bag. Last but not least in the fairway driver department, and I kind of struggle to call it a fairway driver because it really brings the distance of a maximum distance driver, but also the controllability of a mid-range. And that's the Thunderbird, baby. I love this disc. I might be biased, my name's on it, but this disc truly has the goods. When I'm in the field and I'm throwing just for distance, it's landing next to and sometimes past my destroyers, and I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense to me. It's a slower disc. I don't know why it's doing that, but it just goes. Innova was trying to make basically a T-bird with destroyer distance, and they hit the nail on the head. This thing is just long and straight. If I'm going down a tunnel and I don't have that much space left and right, but I need that distance, it's a Thunderbird. If I've got a 270-foot shot that finishes right, it's a Thunderbird. It fills the gap between that 500 foot and that 250 even, sometimes as short as 250 range. It's just as versatile is the best way to put it. I can throw forehand, backhand, you know, and sometimes there are discs that I want to throw only backhand or only forehand. The Thunderbird isn't that. I really enjoy using it for all types of shots. I throw it for forehand rollers, sometimes backhand rollers. The only thing I don't do with it is tomahawks and thumbers. I mean, it's every other thing you can think of, this disc is it. My favorite run so far would probably be the 2019s. It has just kind of that medium dome. It's not too flat, it's not too domey, it's not too rigid, it's not too soft. I was calling them the Goldilocks Thunderbirds. They're just right. It's right there in the middle. It's exactly what you want. And I've just thrown this thing probably 100,000 times in the last 2 years. And, you know, heaven forbid I ever lose this disc. This is gonna be in my bag for the rest of my career. I like that one so much that I've got 2 of the 2019s in the bag. And this one is just a little bit less beat up. So if I need a little bit more stability, I'll go with this one. But between those 2, those are covering most of the uses for Thunderbirds in my bag. Also really excited to introduce the 2020 Thunderbird. This thing is a little bit more stable. It's a little bit stiffer plastic. So in the summer months, when it starts getting hot outside, I definitely like going with a little bit stiffer plastic because it's not gonna be so gummy in the hand. This thing is a workhorse in the wind. So if I really want the feel of the Thunderbird, the speed of the Thunderbird, and the controllability of the Thunderbird, but a little bit stiffer plastic, you know, this thing is the disc. It's a little bit, like I said, it's a little bit more overstable, but very similar flight. And I mean, it's just pretty. You gotta have that sweet mojo in the bag too. I mean, you can't go out there without sweet discs. Get a 2020 Thunderbird, duh. And the last thing I'll show off, and this is another one of those things that gets interchanged in the bag, really pending the environment. If I wanna go with a little bit more of a forehand friendly Thunderbird, I'm gonna go with the 2017 Thunderbird, and this is the first one I ever bagged. This was the Thundermelon. I don't know if we've ever made a prettier disc. I'm sure there's been someone somewhere that thinks that they owned one, but this, I don't know, this is a contender. This thing is beautiful. Its flight is just so nice. That flat top has a great feel for the forehand release. It's a favorite for so many players for a good reason. But yeah, this goes in the bag every once in a while. I'm a little bit hesitant to throw it sometimes because it's so pretty, I don't want to lose it. But like I said, you gotta have that mojo in the bag every once in a while, man. All right, heading over to the mid-range department. Start off with a very important disc for me, just for nostalgia and because it really brings me back to the beginning, is this Rancho Star Rock. Stable rock is just a staple for pretty much any pro in the history in disc golf. I mean, it is just the most popular mid-range mold in the history of disc golf for great reason. It's incredibly true to its flight, on its angle, and you can't ask for better consistency from a mid-range than a good Star Rock. I also have a Star Rock 3. I got this from Paige Pierce. I did not win the distance contest in the women's division in 2017. Paige did. So I got her to sign the back of it. This thing is a little bit straighter than my Star Rancho Rock, and it's for those turnover shots that need to hold the line, but I'm not concerned about it being too understable where it might cut edge and roll. A nice, consistent stand-up. This is a shot that I've been working a lot on in the last 3-4 years of my career and has probably seen the most improvement out of my entire game. So important to work on a very solid mid-range foundation when you're learning disc golf. No better disc to start off with than a Star Rock 3. Now for my most understable mid-range. If I need a shot that to just hold the turn the entire way and maybe even thrown with a little bit of hyzer and just keeps that drift going. And I'm specifically talking once again about forehands in the woods, such an important part of my game. I'm going with the C-Line MD2. It's just so important to have a disc that you can release with trust that it's gonna do its intended purpose. And I've found that the MD2 has been that disc for so long. It really is the best flip-up mid-range disc I've ever thrown. You have to have an overstable mid-range in the bag. I just don't think I've ever been able to trust an overstable mid-range quite like I can the Recon Mortar. It is so forehand friendly. It's overstable, but not so much so that you can't get a little bit of distance out of it. It's got that really nice medium-sized profile where it's not too deep and you can't get the disc out of your hand, but it's also not too thin where it kind of slips out of the grip. It's a nice medium level where you really get your hand in there, you trust your grip, and you can really put a lot of power behind it. And kind of like the Firebird is self-correcting for bad form, mortar does that. If you release it with a little bit of flutter, this thing makes up for it with its stability. I think it's got some sort of built-in GPS thing where it just knows that it's supposed to go straight and finish off to the right. And yeah, this thing has been so important for my pro career. Can't imagine a better forehand disc into any sort of windy situation. All right, we talked about all these discs and they're all super important. But I have to say, honestly, there's not one single more important disc in my bag for my game than the Star AVR X3. This is the first one I was ever given, first one I've ever thrown. It's still my go-to to this day. It's just been my workhorse. It holds an Anheuser, it holds a hyzer, but mostly I just love it for those dead straight shots where I gotta flick a lot of power and I can go high, I can go low. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't drift that much one way or the other. It just kind of goes where you put it. And you can't ask for anything more than that when you're talking about the approach disc. It's the most important shot in the game. Nothing more frustrating than not getting up and down when you're 250 feet away from the pin and nothing's in the way. You have to have that go-to disc. For me, for the last 3 years, it has been the AVR X3. I strongly recommend any player who's not throwing this disc, go to your local retailer and get one of these things immediately. You will thank me later. All right, and now we're down to it. Just the putters left. I putt with a KP2 line putter. These things are just nice bricks, a nice amount of tackiness to it, good feel in the plastic, really shows its worth when it gets a little bit warmer. In the cold, it can be a little bit slick, and sometimes you might want to change the plastic, might want to go with a Nexus Firefly, but I am in love with the KP2s. These things are just super straight, a little bit of stability. I believe Dave Dunapace at one point said it was the best putter he had ever designed. The final disc in my bag that we'll talk about today is the Shimmer Star Big Bead AVR. I don't think I've heard anyone talk about this disc in years, and that's just bonkers. This thing is the sweetest point-to-point putter, so stable, such a true release. You can throw this thing as hard as you want to and it's not turned over. It just goes straight and does exactly what you tell it to do. And when you're not throwing it, it's a great place to put your little knee pad that you can bring out in the woods when you got to get down to a knee. This thing has been in my bag for years and will be in there for the rest of my career. Normally, when I do my in the bags, I really like to get into the stuff that I have in my bag. I think those things are so important because it really is the personality of my bag. But today we're gonna keep things a little briefer. I'm just gonna talk about my minis because my minis to me are like my most expressive way of just really showing that minis are fun, cool, and I love them. First one, that's just a showcase piece. This sits on the outside of my bag. This is my Donald Duck Frisbee Mini, given me by none other than Mr. 1100 himself, Dan Hastings. That disc just brings a smile to my face. There's a bunch of Frisbees around Donald Duck's face. That's awesome, okay? Next thing is this mini that I got from Frisbee Point in Helsinki, Finland. I like a plain mini that's got that nice plastic where you can really squeeze it. And we all get frustrated from time to time, and it's better than punching the ground or a tree or yourself. Just squeeze a mini. Pops right back into place. This thing's nice, I like it. Dickie Brewer, my homie. You, my friend, have helped me make the Spinny Mini, okay? Fidget spinners, they were cool a couple years ago. I know you guys probably forgot about that, but a fidget spinner mini, that's still cool and will always be cool, okay? Don't even pretend like you don't want one. We know you do. The last disc, the last piece of plastic we're gonna talk about today is the mini that I use on the course. This thing is probably pound for pound or ounce for ounce, the most mojo of anything in my bag, and that is my plug mini. Innova used to take the end of the plastic and they'd plug a little bit left in the mold, they'd pop out and they'd have these little extra bits of plastic. They don't do that anymore, so these things are super rare. Most of the ones that I've always seen were Champion or Star plastic, and they were really cool. But the thing that I always wanted was one that Ken Climo had, and he always had a DX red plug. And I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, and I always wanted one. So when I finally got my hands on one, I was super pumped. And it's been my mini since that day. I love the feel of it. It's so low profile in my pocket that I never think about it, but If I lost this thing, I would be heartbroken because I absolutely love this little thing. It's just a flat piece. Honestly, on hillsides, it's not that good. It slides away. Might want to switch to a different Mini or not even marking your disc. But this thing right here, I love it. You gotta have stuff like that in your bag, people. You gotta have fun. And for me, this thing provides a lot of that enjoyment. You're not gonna go to the disc golf course without a towel. Check this bad boy out. Oh, I love topographical designs. This thing, obviously, if you follow disc golf, you know this is hole 7 at USDGC, one of the most famous holes in the world, home of my favorite win of my career, the 2016 USDGC. Innova's got sweet towels. You gotta dry your discs off somehow. Head over to the site. That's gonna do it for today's In the Bag. I'm so thankful that you watched this video. If you have any questions, leave them below. Every once in a while, I might get on YouTube and respond. Please check out some of these molds. If you haven't already, Innova makes such a great lineup of discs from driver to fairway driver to mid-range to putter. And all these things are tried and true from pros to AMs to intermediates and everyone in between. Check them out. We'll see you on the course. Clip it to my thoughts. We're gonna do a silent in the bag. Just like communicate with my eyes. That's how I got Jules. You bastard. There it is. That took nice 5 attempts. Oh, could you hear that, Levi? Yeah. Oh, that felt good.